Coaching the Fight here. Guys, Stacy with me.
Hello.
And in today's class, we're going to be talking about the sabbatical year.
Okay, sabbatical year.
I was actually working on a bigger class where I'm going in to prove the Jubilee year. And when we will have the next Jubilee year. And in doing so, it actually showed that the sabbatical year will actually start in the year 2021.
Is that unusual for the sabbatical year to be the year before the Jubilee?
No, that's when it always falls. You have 49 years, or 7 times 7 years, 7 times the sabbatical years to equal 49 years, and then the next year will be a Jubilee year.
Okay, that makes sense.
But when I was doing that class, Stacy had a lot of questions about what it is that she's supposed to do in the sabbatical year.
Just a few.
Yeah, more than a few. And because that class was supposed to be about the timing of it, we decided to have a whole separate class when we're going to talk about what it is that we're supposed to do on the sabbatical year.
Yeah, a lot of my questions is dealing with us being farmers, and we get all of our food. Well, I'll say the majority of our food, maybe 80% of our food from the land. It's very important for us to be able to harvest the previous year, the previous time. So those were the majority of my questions. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to cover that. We're going to cover the land, but we're also going to cover what the sabbatical year has to do with your debts and your freedom.
Okay.
It actually talks about your freedom and your debts. All of that is covered in the sabbatical year. And so we'll be jumping down through several verses here in the Old Testament as we understand what it is we're supposed to do about the sabbatical year. Like we said, it starts later on this year. And we'll start over here in the book of Exodus, chapter 23.
Okay.
You know why we're starting in 23?
Exodus 23?
Yeah.
Exodus 23, I know, that's part of the covenant.
That's right. That's why we're starting in that, because it shows that the sabbatical year is a covenant issue. It's a covenant rule. Not all rules are covenant rules.
So you have to.
You have to. If you don't, this is life or death. If you don't keep the sabbatical year, then you're actually a covenant breaker.
Okay.
And of course, we need the covenant to help us to get through the tribulation, to survive the tribulation. That's why I say that if you don't keep the sabbatical year, it could be life or death situation for some of us.
Well, I would think that the sabbatical year applies more so to people in the country. Is that true?
It very well could, but we're going to see here as we go down through here and give some real world examples of things that have happened to us. It actually starts when the person's in a city and when the person's in Egypt, especially that freedom part that we'll get to here in a second. Okay. But before we do, let's jump over here and let's look. If you would, read Exodus chapter 23 and verse 10.
Okay, verse 10. In 6 years you shall sow thy land, and shall gather in the fruits thereof.
6 years you shall sow your land. So like you said, that part right there seems to pertain to people who have land. And maybe lives. I guess there's some people in the cities that have land.
Yeah.
Yeah, but wherever you have land, even if it's just a small yard, this actually pertains to it too. It might even pertain to a container garden. I don't know. That might be adding a little. Yeah. Because it's really all about the earth getting a rest, right? And I don't know if your containers fall in that category, but I don't know. I think I would be cautious. Yeah. All right, let's go on to the next one.
But the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie still, that the poor of your land may eat, and what they leave the beasts of the field shall eat. In like manner you shall deal with thy vineyard and with thy olive yard.
So this is talking about olive trees. This is talking about grapevines. This is talking about just about everything that you have growing out there, how you're supposed to leave it for the poor to eat during the sabbatical year.
Yeah, I was reading over this verse, I think early this morning or last night, and my mind immediately, when I got to, in like manner you shall deal with thy vineyard and with thy olive yard, I'm thinking that most of these plants were perennial.
Yeah, well, but I think it's actually calling out your perennial plants separately, because you're told not to plant annual plants like peas or greens
Right.
or stuff like that. But then it's going as far as to call out the other plants too.
To let you know that none of it
Yeah.
don't be
It
eaten.
doesn't mention cherry trees or pecan trees here, but I think it's talking about that too.
Right.
They're supposed to leave it for the poor to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we need to put a sign up to say free pecans next year.
Okay.
I mean, we can't pick them, but they're
No,
going to
you
be
can't
all
pick
over the
'em.
yard.
Yeah.
They're
But
going to be everywhere. If it was anything like it was this year,
mm-hmm.
we had a bumper crop of pecans everywhere. I think we still got pecans everywhere in boxes and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you know how I feel about that. It's usually the poor that doesn't come to reap it. It's usually the people who come to reap it to sell it and make money to go to Walmart and buy microwave oven or something.
that ain't really our business, If they need to go get a microwave oven, that's between them and the Father. But for the next verse, let's jump over and let's look at Deuteronomy and chapter 15, because I want to start talking about the freedoms. You said it seems to pertain to people in the country, but I think this verse over here is going to talk to people who are still in the city.
Okay.
All right, read verse 12.
And if thy brother, an Hebrew man or an Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee, and serve thee 6 years, then in the 7th year you shall let him go free from thee.
Yep. So this is talking about freedoms. This is in the how the servants, we don't really call them slaves today. We actually call them employees or whatever. But in the 7th year, they're actually supposed to go free.
Well, I don't quite understand that. So you're saying that a person working down at a restaurant, if I don't know if they would be considered a servant, or how would you let them go free if they're there by choice?
Yeah, they actually are. I mean, we changed the words to where we call them employees instead of calling them slaves. But if you go back to the old days, these what we call employees are no more than modern day slaves.
Okay, but I think we have to read the next part of that verse where it says if he or she doesn't want to leave, right?
Well, yeah, and that brings me to my next point, because like we said, the sabbatical year starts in the year 2021. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you go back in history, like 2014, and you keep backing up every 7 years, you can look at the patterns and what's happened to you over your life. I know I can look at what's happened to me over the course of my life and what actually, took place.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, in 1986, that was about the times when I was about to get baptized for the first time. But if we look in 1993, that's actually when I got my walking papers, my ETS papers from the military.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been a soldier up until 1993, and then in the fall of 1993, I actually became a civilian again.
All right.
And then the next year would have been the year 2000. Remember what happened in 2000?
2000?
That was when I graduated from college. For the first time, I got my associate's degree from the local college here. And if you remember, we waited until 2001 to go into Auburn University. So that was kind of a release there from one school to the next.
Yeah, in 2000, I remember that I left the
the post office. That's when you got, so that was what it's talking about when it's talking about the freedoms. Even though you really had nothing to do with it, the father, or didn't know about it or anything like that, the Father was working behind the scenes to get you that freedom. Mm-hmm. And that was actually your last time. The year 2000 was the last time you actually worked.
Last time I was an employee.
Last time you was an employee. I was going to say last time you punched the clock or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So that was a sabbatical year, and that was you gaining your freedom in a sabbatical year. And so I think this points to what you was talking about earlier about how the sabbatical year only applies to people in the country. No, I mean, you was a city girl at the time. You was living in the country, but you was straight Babylonian minded in 1999 and 2000.
Yeah, I guess the only time what I was thinking when Because when you talk about the sabbatical year, my mind immediately goes to um, letting the land rest, but that's only a portion of the things that happens. There's a debt, like you said, as well as the liberty
Yep.
that we gain.
In 2007, fast forward 7 years, and what happened in the sabbatical year of 2007, that's when I actually went from one position at TVA to another position at TVA. I left Chattanooga and went to Watts Bar, to a nuclear plant, left headquarters and went straight to the power plant.
In 2007, I had a set of twins.
Yeah, that's when you had a set of twins. Yep.
I don't know if that was a release or if that was a
It had
game,
something to
but
do with it, yeah. And then in 2014, of course, that's when I got all of my freedom from that company altogether, and that was my sabbatical year as far as never having to be an employee again.
mm-hmm.
So my point is that it's actually affected us, even though we were in the city in 2000, going into 2014. We were living in the city, being Babylonians people, shopping at Walmart and buying food, credit cards, and all of that kind of stuff. But by the end of the sabbatical year, we were completely job free and didn't we weren't employees anymore and haven't been ever since.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's go on to another verse that talks about this, and this is going to be over in Jeremiah chapter 34 and verse 14. Jeremiah chapter 34 and 14. All right, we're going to let you read this verse over here, also talking about freedoms.
Okay. 14. At the end of 7 years, let ye go every man his brother and Hebrew, which has been sold unto thee. And when he has served thee 6 years, thou shalt let him go free from thee. But your fathers hearken not unto me, neither incline their ear.
So a lot of people out here who are the Father's people are being awarded this release, awarded this freedom, but they don't know it. And so the first thing they do is go start looking for a job again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember you saying that about your sister,
Yeah.
who had been released from her job, and immediately I think she started looking for another job, and you were telling her to just chill out just for a while. But I don't know if she did or not, but she did find employment.
And then, yeah, of course, and a lot of the people who who got the same reduction in force papers that I did in 2014, by the time they had actually left or been out processed, they already had jobs. They never took the time to allow the Father to work his magic at all. They immediately jumped back in the system. So, people who look back over their life and see, some type of change that happened, in these years should be thinking that, this was the Father trying to make moves in their life.
Yeah, well, I remember I really wanted you to actually go back and try to find another job, simply because I was used to a certain lifestyle and I couldn't imagine living another lifestyle. But hindsight, I am so glad that you did not.
Yeah, because I can't really take advantage of it no more than I'd read in the scripture and saw how it is that our Father wanted to be our provider. Whereas, we think we're supposed to provide for ourselves and, or let, our bosses, give us our, money to buy our food, clothing, and shelter. When you read the scripture, especially in the first 5 books of the Bible, the Father makes it clear that he wanted to be our provider. And so when I saw these changes being made in our life, I decided to, just go with it. Just, step out on faith and allow him to work his plan. And turns out his plan was much better than my plan altogether.
Yep. Everything that he said that he would do has been fulfilled, I would say.
And so, it started off pretty rough there as we was making a transition from being Egyptian-minded people to what do you call it, biblical-minded people. But now that we look back, we almost at the end of this 7-year period, and we see how everything that we had to go through was actually strengthening us and making us stronger now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And getting actually getting ready for all of these hard times that the world is about to face.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's change gears a little bit. That was talking about the freedoms associated with the sabbatical year. Now let's look at what it says about debts. In I think I'm in the right chapter, verse 15 and verse 1.
Okay. At the end of every 7 years, thou shalt make a release.
Okay, so this is talking about a release here on the 7 years. Now let's see if it tells us what the release is about.
And this is the manner of the release. Every creditor that lendeth aught unto his neighbor shall release it. He shall not exact it of his neighbor or of his brother, because it is caused the Lord's release. It is called the Lord's release.
Okay, so now now it's talking about our debts, whereas before it was talking about our employment or our freedoms. Now it's actually talking about our debts.
Mm-hmm.
And so once again, we can actually look over the course of our life and how this actually played out in our life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's see. Before we do so, let's look at verse 3.
Of a foreigner thou mayest exact it again, but that which is thine with thy brother, thine hand shall release.
So he's giving us specifics here, talking about the children of Israel versus maybe Gentiles that we may have lent to. You actually treat them a little bit differently.
Right.
But as spiritual Israel, as the children of our Father, we should be able to see something take place in our life as far as these debts, like we saw with our freedoms.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing so, well, of course, like we talked about in 2014, how we got our walking papers, got a reduction in force paper, but that actually came with a severance package.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And actually, at the end of the sabbatical year in 2014, I would say I was out of debt. I haven't paid debt since.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was the last time going into 2014. I had debts upwards of $250,000.
Yeah, we owed a lot of people. That's including the house, credit cards, vehicles, and all the other things that we had. But it's just a miracle how the Father actually completely released us from all of the debts that we owed.
Yeah, and you can also give credit to the financial laws here in America that allows people to do that. To basically just walk away from it.
Yeah,
That's what it
something
boils down to, is just walking away from it.
Well, there's a consequence with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you ain't
but
gonna, yeah.
Yeah, so
But it's the same. It's similar to the consequences of walking away from the career field.
yeah.
You lose some things that you're used to. Well, that's the same thing with walking away from the financial world too. But when you look back over it, which world would you rather be?
Yeah.
Are you better off now, 7 years later, almost 7 years later, like I said, going into 2014, here you are in 2021, are you better off financially now than you was then?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you definitely are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And going back in time, in the year 2007, you remember in 2007, we actually bought a car in 2007.
Yes, a nice car.
Yeah, you don't remember all the details of that, but the thing is, it was like I had looked at my financial situation and thought that I had some extra money. That's why we bought that car, was because I was comparing the money we were spending compared to the money that we was bringing in, and I'm like, hey, we can afford a new car.
Mm-hmm. I sort of remember it. Yeah.
So that has something to do with the debts. And then in year 2000, there was, and it would, I mean, well, there was some stuff going on with the debts there. In the year 1993, like I said, that's the year I got out of the military. And that was similar to 2014 as far as the debts are concerned. And then back there in 1986, I didn't really have any debts at all. But Every 7 years, we can see this actually playing out in our life as far as the debts are concerned.
Yeah, I believe that if we could just go and look back, really, really think about it, we'll actually see how everything lined up with these scriptures of debt, land, as well as our freedom.
Yeah, and I guess what's important is that we didn't know what was going on at the time, and that really didn't make a huge difference. The
Yeah.
father is showing that he's in control.
Yeah.
It's only in hindsight that we can look back now and say, oh yeah, that's what actually happened.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's continue on talking about debts. Let's jump up to Deuteronomy chapter 31 and verse 10.
Okay. And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, in the solemnity of the year of release, in the Feast of Tabernacles.
So this is talking about in the Feast of Tabernacles, and when we talked about our class that we're gonna, I'm publishing maybe tomorrow or the next day, how the sabbatical years actually start in the fall. They start and end in the fall. And so like we're talking about 2021, this sabbatical year will start in the fall of the year 2021.
Okay.
And so during that time, we can actually expect some type of release, especially the children of our Father.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see exactly what we're going to be released from.
Well, yeah. I don't know if we got too much more. Yeah, from the position that we're in, debt free, job free. What kind of financial change or what kind of change will happen to us? Yeah, it could be interesting. But what's even more interesting is what could actually happen to the world. They're talking about this great reset, and of course, they've been threatening the financial collapse of the stock market for a long time, and so the thing about it, this is a year we could actually see some of that stuff take place in the fall of this year. For globally speaking.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on.
And when all Israel is come to appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, thou shalt read this law before all Israel in their hearing.
Now, this is important to understand here, is that this is something related to reading of the law. So, I actually didn't have this written in my notes, and I'm glad I see it now, because this is another thing that we are supposed to do in the sabbatical year, is actually get back in touch with the law. And if you remember our testimony in 2014, that's actually the year when we did get into the law for the first time. We really started to, keep the commandments.
Yeah.
We had been aware of the commandments and the rules, that there was some rules in the Bible. We had read them before, but it was only in the sabbatical year did we realize that, hey, we actually supposed to be doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the year that we actually discovered the Book of the Covenant for ourselves. Before then, before 2014, I didn't even know there was a such thing called the Book of the Covenant.
Right. And we were definitely not law keepers.
And definitely not law keepers. We were trying to, keep the feast days and maybe the 10 Commandments, but, we really didn't dig into the book of Exodus, chapter 20, chapter 21, 22, chapter 23, like we do now, and trying to follow, even those commandments and all the rest of the commandments in the Bible too. It's really been a life change. But the thing about it, the point is that this starts during the sabbatical year.
Yeah. Yeah, come to think of it, I really didn't think nothing of the Old Testament was important, but, the 10th Commandments, and I was following them loosely. But now that we know that, actually the Old Testament is to be followed, and we discovered this in that sabbatical year.
Yeah, we started in a sabbatical year. And again, just like the debts, just like the freedoms, it was almost supernatural that we were led in that direction, even in our unawares. We didn't really know what was going on, but our Father, was putting us in that position to, actually, learn about the law. Yeah. So, all right, now. So that was about debts. Now we're gonna switch gears and start talking about the land a little bit.
Okay.
Let's read verse 4 in Leviticus chapter 25.
But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard.
Okay, so now this is what we saw over there in the book of the covenant, almost the exact same words, where it's talking about the vineyard, and what does it say else? Sow the field,
Right.
right? So there's no planting, and there's, no pruning. So that means, cutting trees or whatever. So when you're thinking about the sabbatical year, you got to be thinking, wow, you got all of this. If you got, trees and stuff to be pruning, this is the year to be doing it, because there is no pruning for a year, at least a year after September of 2021.
Yeah. And we have a lot of young trees, but I know we are not supposed to plant or harvest anything from the trees for 3 years. So now, I don't know. It just seems to have fallen at the right time.
Yeah, it keeps reminding me how he's actually controlling this, and we are, praise the Lord, being manipulated by his plans, even in our unawares. But now, and that kind of reminds me how we just ordered a lot of trees,
Yeah.
even olive trees.
Right.
And if you think about it, maybe we need to order some more olive trees, because this is the year to plant them. We won't be able to plant them next year.
Right.
We'll get I think we got 4 olive trees now, and we'll get them and try to get them growing as best we can. Or maybe we need to get a few more, and get more trees, and because this is the year of planting. Next year you don't plant trees.
Right.
Or prune trees, or
Right.
anything else. All right, let's go to verse 5.
That which groweth of its own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of thy vine undressed, for it is a year of rest unto the land.
So this sounds to me, and I don't want to add to the scripture at all, but I often think, okay, well, what about all of them nuts that's going to be on the ground? It sounds like you're not supposed to be out there picking off of the trees,
Right.
but the nuts are falling on the ground.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to rake them up anyway. So what do you do with them? Well, you rake them up. They down there with the leaves. Your yard gonna get pretty messy. The squirrels gonna have a field day.
Yeah, they have a field day this winter.
All right. Now, so let's see. Are we done with that one? We could go on to the next one, talking about land.
Okay.
All right, looks like we missed verse 3 out of that. But go ahead and read verse 3, and then we're going to jump down and look at some more verses out of this chapter.
Okay, this is verse 3, Leviticus 25. 6 years you shall sow thy field, and 6 years you shall prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof.
So again, you have 6 years to do all. It's like the Sabbath day, like the week of this, like the work week. You have 6 days in order to do your work, and then you have to prepare for that 7th year, or that 7th day. Well, it's like that when it comes to the years too, where 6 years you actually do all of your tilling and planting and pruning and whatever, picking, but then in you actually getting prepared for that 7th year, where the land is actually going to get a rest.
And you actually think that the land, being a living being, that it actually needs a rest, because now it gets time to, because when you plant, you rob the land of a lot of the nutrients and different things like that. So I think it's just so great that the Father is giving the land, which provides for us, one of the elements that provide for us, that it gets rest as well.
Yeah, and we're going to see here, when we go to the next part, what actually happens if you don't. But let's look down here in verse 6.
Verse 6. And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee, and for thy servant, and for thy maid, and for thy hired servant, and for thy stranger that sojourneth with thee.
Okay, so it's talking about it shall be meat for you, or food for you. So this is actually, I don't know, like it's talking about a rest period or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think the main part about this is it's talking about the servants, the maids, the sojourner, everybody, just like the Sabbath day.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just sit back and enjoy your Sabbath day while everybody around you is still working.
Right.
Well, it goes for the sabbatical year too.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, even the cattle.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got oxen and stuff, they're actually going to take a year off from plowing and everything.
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go on to the next one.
Number 7.
Yep.
And for the cattle and for the beasts that are in the land shall all the increase thereof be meat.
Yep. So this sabbatical year affects everybody. It's supposed to go for everybody and everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go on.
And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years until thee, 7 times 7 years, and the space of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto thee 49 years.
Okay, now this one is actually getting into the Jubilee year.
Okay.
But we're going to save that one for another class where we'll talk about, the specifics of the Jubilee year. A lot of similarities, but there are some differences, but we'll cover those in another class. For the next part, we're actually going to jump to Leviticus chapter 26, and we're going to talk about what happens if you don't do this, if you actually plant on your land.
The consequences.
The consequences, Leviticus 26, it's all about curses and stuff.
Yep. A lot of people say that the Father always loved you unconditionally, but there's always conditions I found on things that he tells you to do.
Well, be careful now. He loves you unconditionally, just like you do your children.
Yeah.
You love all your children. It don't matter, if they misbehave or not.
Yeah.
The thing about what's conditional is his blessings.
Mm.
That's what's conditional. It's just like that child. I still love you, but that don't mean that I'm going to give you stuff.
Or discipline.
Yeah.
These conditions are, there's conditions upon you being disciplined as well.
Man, just because I'm spanking on your butt don't mean I don't love you.
That's true.
It's actually the opposite is true. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't discipline you at all.
Yeah.
Get out there and get it. You know what I mean? Go let the popo get you. You know what I'm saying? Let them discipline you.
Yeah.
And so, all right. So let's look at Leviticus chapter 26 and verse 34.
34. Then shall the Lord enjoy. 34. Mm-hmm. Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbaths as long as it lieth desolate, and ye be in your enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbaths.
Looks like I skipped down a few too many verses here, but what this is talking about is the consequences if you don't follow this. This is talking about how you're actually going to get kicked off of your land.
So it's saying that you will be in your enemy's land?
You're going to be in the cities. You're going to be down there, forced to be down in the Egyptian culture, working for them. You're not going to have the benefit of enjoying your own land anymore. That's why when we look around, where we live, there's so much desolate land around because those people are in the enemy's land. They're actually, in the cities.
So do you think that is what happened with us? That we did not participate or we didn't do the Sabbath in the previous year before we left in 2000 and went to Auburn?
Well, the thing is, I don't know if we ever had any land. We were still, in 2000, we were...
Oh, you have to have land.
Well, at some point we started off with nothing. And it was only in 2014, 2015 that we actually got land for the first time. Before then, I really didn't own anything.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, maybe it was that we had been pushed off into the cities or whatever. But, even when we was in the country before then, we were still Egyptian minded people. Just because you live in the country don't mean that you are, living a country lifestyle. Just like, there's a lot of people around here who, they live in this backwoods community, but they jump in their car and drive, 50 miles to the city area where they work at.
Yeah, we're one of the only, there's 2 people in our community of probably about how many people? maybe about 75.
Hey, yeah, okay. At the
75,
most.
75, 50 to 75 people. And um, my grandmother, who's 96, who probably won't garden this year, and us, our family, are the only gardeners who actually sow the land. The rest of the people, um, rest of the families, um, don't harvest, garden, or even plant. They don't even have container gardens.
Yeah. But, and, I believe the reason why is because they didn't allow the land to rest when the land was supposed to get a rest, and they didn't allow that. Now, just the way the Father puts it in our minds in order to do the right thing, I think the same is true too, where those individuals who are not allowing the land to rest are they don't ever have the thought to actually plant and to till and to try to live out. It don't even make sense for them to use the land, to let the land take care of them, to eat from the land. That don't even make sense.
So, what are some of the other consequences?
Well, I think that was about it. Let's read verse 35.
As long as it lieth desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbaths when ye dwelt upon it.
So anybody who has land or anything should really be paying close attention to this, because if you don't, you're gonna get removed from it, and that should remind you of the children of Israel and how they ended up in Babylon. Like we talked about in that class that I'm doing on the Jubilee year, the scripture doesn't talk much about the sabbatical years or the Jubilee years, which one could imply that those people didn't really pay close attention to them. And it even goes as far as to say that's why they were put in bondage in Babylon, was because they didn't honor the sabbatical years. And so while they were in exile, the land was resting.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I believe that. I believe that because, a lot of times when you would see the scriptures say, and God gave them over to so and so, and God gave them over. And I'm like, well, what did they do? But, a lot of the things are unspoken, but yet that does not mean that they didn't happen. So,
yeah. All right, now the last verse we'll look at is back over here in Leviticus chapter 25. I'm going to start all the way back up here in verse, let's just start in 18.
Leviticus 25 and 18. Wherefore ye shall do my statutes and keep my judgments and do them, and ye shall dwell in the land in safety.
In the land in safety. Now, this kind of reminds us back in, 2014, we was, as we was starting this journey, you remember us having a conversation that, we wasn't too safe. Things wasn't too safe, back then. Things seems extraordinarily safe these days, praise the Lord. But, we can only, thank him for bringing us here.
There was a lot of toil and turmoil and tribulations that we were going through, and I definitely did not feel safe.
Yeah. Look at 19.
20.
Nope, 19.
And the land shall yield her fruit, and ye shall eat your fill and dwell therein in safety. Yes.
Okay. Now, and then go to 20.
And if you shall say, what shall we eat the 7th year? Behold, we shall not sow nor gather in our increase.
So anybody who's got land, I'm sure just like you, and it seems to be the woman of the house, they say, hey, what we gonna eat next year? We ain't supposed to be planting. We now you think about all of this. So you not supposed to plant at all. You not gonna have a job at all, and you're not gonna have any credit cards at all.
And with you're not going to be going to the store at all.
So what is it that you're going to eat? How is it that you're going to get this food from? And what you're going to do? And all of what we come to be used to in this Egyptian culture is now gone. Well, how is it? What we're going to eat?
Yeah.
And that's what it's saying there in verse 20. But look at verse 21.
Then I will command my blessings upon you in the 6th year, and it shall bring forth fruit for 3 years.
For 3 years. So now this is what we should be expecting. And now in the year 2021 is huge blessings when it comes to provisions. To I don't know how the Father, for some people who are living in cities or whatever, I can only go back to, what happened to me in 2014 and how, like I said, I got a huge, I had money coming from everywhere in 2014. And we didn't have land and we didn't have crops or anything, but the Father, he provided for us through our money and through money then. And so you think about, okay, so in 2013 would have been year 6. It would have ended in the fall of 2014, and the sabbatical year started in 2014 in the fall and went to 2015. Well, you think about all of we liquidated our 401ks. We sold all of the land that we had, all over the country. We did a lot of stuff to where there was a lot of big checks coming in all the time. And even though we weren't aware of what was going on, we were actually we actually got enough fruit. Throw my hand quotes up. Actually got enough fruit to last for 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sitting here wondering, does he provide you with the substance as to where you're at? And I mean, like, if you are a farmer, do he provide that fruit as actual food? If you are a person who has a job and does not farm, does he provide that fruit as actual money? I mean, how have
Well, that's what I'm talking about. In 2014, we didn't have a farm,
right?
so it all came through money.
Yeah.
It all came in the form of money, and it was enough to last maybe even a little longer than 3 years.
Yeah, because even when the actual cash was gone, we still had the residual
Yeah,
of animals that we had purchased with the cash.
yeah.
So when we didn't have, say, funds in the bank, we had
We had purchased
cows.
cows
We
and
had
stuff.
cows that we could sell and liquidate them and get funds.
Yeah,
So
because that was the
yeah.
first thing we did when we started moving to when we started exiting Babylon was we started buying cattle. And like you said, when the funds ran out, all you do is go sell a goat, go sell a sheep, and get the funds that you needed. And it lasted so that would have been 2014, 15, and 16. And then in the 8th year would have been 2016, when it lasted even beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah, it did.
Because look at verse 22.
And ye shall sow the 8th year, and eat yet of old fruit until the 9th year. Until her fruits come in, ye shall eat of the old store. So that's exactly what happened.
That's exactly what happened. Yep. Without
Wow.
doing the math, we had big gardens, and I could hear your brain spinning, like how the Lord actually did this for us, and we didn't even understand these verses at the time. Well, that's a lot of people who are listening to this video. They are hearing this and going, is the Father working behind the scenes in my life as well? And I'm sure he is. It won't all look the same. It won't all be the same. But, he and his infinite wisdom understands everybody and their own individual conditions and their own circumstances. And he's working to, make this happen the way it's supposed to happen.
Yeah, he's actually, he's for us. He wants us to have an abundant life.
Wants us to prosper.
He is working this stuff out for. And yeah, my head is spinning just sitting here thinking about how everything seems to line up with that occurred in our lives to have lined up with these scriptures.
Yep. The thing is, for anybody listening, don't interfere. Don't get in the way. Don't try to undo stuff. When you see stuff going certain ways, don't think that it's wrong or an error. Like if you lose your job or something, don't think that that's, Satan working. Like I used to say a long time ago, we give Satan credit for the Father's stuff and we give the Father credit for Satan's stuff. You know what I mean? It could be the Father actually, setting you up for something bigger in your life, so, you should be thanking the Lord for everything that happens to you, praying, of course, staying in the covenant and doing what you're supposed to be doing, and then praising the Father for all things that happen.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Because, anybody that would come down to, well, our land would think that it wasn't a blessing, but, we're not having to wake up every morning and go out and work for, like they said, work for build somebody else's dream.
Yeah.
And, it's just a blessing to be able, like you said, you have to do your part too. You have to, stay in the covenant. You have to be obedient. You can't be uh 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 arrogant and
Rebellious and
rebellious and all that other stuff. You have to do what he has to say, and these blessings are for you. Like I
yep.
said, he's for us.
He's working for us behind the scenes.
Yep.
All right, guess we'll close it out there.
Yep. Well, that answered a lot of my questions. I still have a lot of other questions, but that was a start.
Well, all right. Well, I ended by saying, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
Shalom.
Shalom.